welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I'm your host, Mary Catherine Ham. I'm here with my co-host, Vic Mattis of the Washington Free Beacon. We are your morning show for any hour, and this morning I have more sleep than I did the other morning, so feeling good. Came back from New York, fell asleep at 7:30 p.m. in the middle of a sentence, and here I am, back on the job, here in the salt mines of politics. How's it going, Vic? Before we get into the concession speech, the backbiting, the rationalizations, the cope, some good analysis of what happened in this election. First, how's it going?
Hello, Mary Catherine. Well, I would say like half the country, I am sick to my stomach. Mm-hmm. And the reason is on the night of election, we had unlimited sort of platters of Chick-fil-A.
Ah, well, that'll do it.
And the question, you go to a Chick-fil-A and you want to be normal like the other people. It's like, oh, okay, I'll have whatever the meal is. The meal is one sandwich and, waffle fries.
Right.
In this case, in case you're wondering how Chick-fil-A works for catering, they do not send they won't do waffle fries because it becomes soggy. So they have waffle fry chips.
As we've discussed, I enjoy a soggy fry. Sorry,
yes,
everyone.
you wouldn't have had a problem with it.
That's my bad take.
You wouldn't have had a problem with it. The chips are... Qua chips, shall we say, are pretty good. 220 calories is pretty serious for a bag of chips, but they taste delicious. Yes, Jennifer, 220. Normally, it's about 140. Not that I analyze these things. But don't you feel like after you have one Chick-fil-A sandwich, Mary Catherine, regular or spicy,
mm-hmm.
that you could always feel like you want another one or no? Do you feel like,
yeah.
I'm full?
Oh,
you
I could
want
definitely have two.
Right.
For
so
sure.
I did do that. I was going to say I didn't do it. I did. I had I had a spicy and a regular.
Let's be honest.
Yes, I had a spicy, the regular, and some of the nuggets. Which, by the way, if they're in front of you, unless you remove it, I will continue to eat.
I could eat, 63 of
yeah,
those.
I was going to say a platter.
Yeah.
It's funny you should say that. A friend of mine said 70. So I think that's probably the range of what people think. So I said,
that's just my gut feeling.
I need to, you're speaking of gut feeling is right. The next day I'm like, I need to recover. But then I forgot, so post-election, they decided to have like at the Beacon, we're going to spring for like a post-election lunch at the office. And what did they get? McDonald's. Kind of a joke.
Love it.
And again, you go to McDonald's, you're paying for it yourself. You have constraints, meals, whatever. You feel weird about getting more.
Right.
You want to be an animal. Like I usually like to get the sort of.
See, I don't experience the constraint part, but I hear what you're saying.
You can sort of understand. Well, it's all laid out in front of us here, right, at the office yesterday. And the fries were actually not bad considered they were delivered. They weren't firm, but they were still warm, which is nice.
Okay.
I had a double quarter pounder with cheese, which is over 1,000 calories, okay? Good thing I didn't have breakfast. And it came with the onion slivers because it's safe around here. There was an onion sliver problem where people were getting E. coli, and that was not good.
There? I missed that.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
in
that's
different
right.
parts of the country, but not in the Virginia area. And then after that, I ate more. I can't remember what it was that I
ate more.
And so after those 2 days, this morning, in the middle of the night,
that was what was bothering you.
Yeah, I felt like Morgan Spurlock when he did Super Size Me, minus the alcoholism. As you know, that's what really, the numbers were off because it wasn't just I'm failing, may he rest in peace, because of the McDonald's every day that he did for a month or something.
Yeah, he had confounding issues.
Yes.
I think is what they call those statistically. Yeah.
Yes, like something about the liver.
Yeah.
Although I'm obviously on the way there too. But that's how I felt like. And in case you're wondering, you can have enough. Your body is like, okay. At the moment, you're like, I can keep on going.
Yeah, you're like, I'm loving it.
I wanted to get I'm loving it is right. It's a good time for the great taste. And a double quarter pounder, I almost had a Big Mac. And it took absolute constraint for me to say, you know what? Celebration's over.
Just the double quarter pounder is enough.
The double quarter, it's so good, Mary Catherine.
It's funny you say that because on the way to New York on Election Day, I thought to myself, I could keep it clean. We could do clean fuel,
You mean clean fuel for your body?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I had
think that every day.
I had forgotten to eat before I left the house, and there I was at Union Station where they have a McDonald's.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it's McDonald's or Cafe Car. And I decided McDonald's was obviously
Yes.
the better choice in that situation. The hot dogs aren't bad from the Cafe Car, but I wanted McDonald's. So I did the double quarter pounder with cheese.
You did a
meal,
double.
And I upsized my fries. And it was worth it. But it's good that I did that because in the evening, I was at work from 5 p.m. to 3 a.m.
Oh.
I did make myself eat some of the catered catered food at the newsroom, which was actually pretty good. I had a piece of salmon. It was great.
I was going to say, so a lot of us want to know what the green room deal is.
So
in terms
I don't know
of the
what
spread at Fox.
I don't know what restaurant they got it from, but it's boxed. It comes in big cardboard boxes, and inside there's plastic containers of like a pretty full, generous meal. This was salmon with rice and green beans and salad. And
self-contained, so not a spread.
And we also had chicken cordon bleu was one of the.
Whoa!
I didn't check that one out.
That's very old school.
I believe there was some beef kebabs or something along those lines. So
chicken cordon bleu.
Yeah, a couple different choices, and one vegetarian choice that I don't recall. And I had the salmon because I was like, let's keep it under control here because late at night on election night it's nothing but junk food, right?
Yeah,
so let's do something
snacking.
Good for me. So I had salmon.
And
then around 11:30, I had New York pizza. And I was not I was not mad about that. But here was the worst part, food-wise, of my election night, is that I forgot to grab a snack when I got off work at 3:30 a.m. And then there's nothing.
Wait a minute.
Right?
You wanted to have a snack though at 3:30 when you got off?
We're all wired because we're on TV, right? You haven't come down yet. So I was going to be up for a while. And I get back to the hotel and I was like, well, they'll have like a mini bar or something. There was no mini bar. And when you get out at 3:30, you're past last call. So we couldn't go to a bar.
There was no mini bar.
Yeah. So anyway,
that's surprising.
I just had nothing.
You know what? If only they had the mini bar, you could have had the kind bar or the bag of nuts for $15.
Right.
It's just really a missed opportunity.
A $33 3 sips of cab.
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you one time on election night, CNN, or a special occasion, I can't remember what it was, but I went up to CNN. And CNN booked me at their regular hotel, but sometimes when the hotels are all full, you end up, because they have a contract, if the penthouse is open and it's the only thing open, you get the penthouse. And so one election night, I ended up, this has happened to me twice actually, 2 election nights, I've ended up in the penthouse.
Do you remember what hotel it was?
I don't remember, but it was giant. I mean, it was bigger than my house.
Yeah.
And it had like a balcony outside and a fireplace. And it was such a bummer because I didn't know I was in the penthouse till I checked in, and I didn't check in till I was done with work, and it's like 1 a.m, and I'm texting anyone I know in New York City like, someone come see this.
It's so good. I'm want people
having
to
a
see
party,
it.
And no one wants to come to my party because it's already 1:30 in the morning. So anyway,
it's always best to share. You want to share the experience.
Yes, I did.
It's exciting.
Anyway, back to normal life. Definitely not the penthouse. I dropped off my kid at preschool this morning. And then, as is my way, once I drop her off, the teacher's like, is Dad coming by today? And I was like, for what?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then I remembered, there is some sort of Dad's Day celebration that they're having that, of course, because it's election week, I missed the memo on.
Yeah.
And so I call my husband, he was, I believe, in the gym at the moment. And I was like, hey, neither of us noticed this, but if you want to jump over there, and he's like, jumps in the car immediately and comes to Dad's Day.
Wow.
With his daughter, very nice. Because he came from the gym, he was like in his ball cap and shorts and a sleeveless shirt, walking into Dad's Day.
Bulging veins, and the teachers are like, "Hi, can I help you?" Yeah.
I'm sure he'll tell me about it if that's what happened. But we did realize that our daughter, who at home is so loud, Vic, the loudest person.
Okay.
I was upstairs getting ready to take her to school, and she's just yelling up the stairs for 3 to 5 minutes at the top of her lungs, going, "Mama, go to school. I go work." Because she says work, because she gets her little bag and goes to work.
She's going to work, yeah.
And,
that's what it feels like sometimes.
But then when she has to sing with a group, as she did for Dad Day, not interested in that.
Quieter.
She just sits quietly and looks around like everyone else is crazy.
That's...
So I guess the Christmas concert will not be what I hoped. But,
Well, I mean, does she mouth at all? Mouth it
Oh,
or no?
no.
No. She's a
No.
full-on like protest.
she's looking at others with contempt for following the crowd. That's that's the vibe I'm
Okay,
getting.
yeah.
I'm getting a libertarian vibe.
Yeah.
I'm getting a non-joiner
She's
vibe.
a rebel. Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Speaking of non-joiners,
Hey.
let's talk about all the rejection of the Democratic Party during election night 2024. So, I think certainly a couple days out now, you can say this was a pretty
2 days.
resounding
Yeah.
right-leaning vote
And only
all
becoming
over the country.
more and more resounder, shall we say?
Yeah. So if you look at the maps, there are helpful maps from the New York Times and the like that show, I'll give them their props, on the data stuff. They're
No, the
quite good.
data stuff is very good.
So they've got the maps where they have a red arrow pointing right or a blue arrow pointing left if the area has moved in the direction of the right or the direction of the left. And man, that map is red.
I thought it was a weather map at first. I said, "There's a red wind blowing through America."
The red arrows are everywhere.
Yeah.
The red arrows are everywhere. It is there's a lot of theories about it. I wonder what your theory is for this. And whether it is a wholesale like rejection of the status quo. Is it a wholesale rejection of Biden and Harris? Is it a rejection of general leftiness? I wonder what you think.
Okay, well, the first thing is, I do think it's a rejection of the brand. We've said this on the show before. When is the pendulum going to swing back? I kind of think that for all the talk we had at this during this election season about all the various gaffes that Donald Trump made, right? The things that he said, this is going to get him now. This is the end of it now. People are speaking out. Obviously people who work for him said he cannot be trusted. He's a threat to democracy, or he's weird and he's a fascist. I don't know at the end of the day if any of that would have mattered, or the garbage comment made by the comedian that basically got equated to him saying that Puerto Rico is garbage. At the end of the day, whether it would have been Kamala Harris or certainly Joe Biden, I think people were like, we're done with this. And the media will want you, certainly late night shows and everywhere else, to think that Joe Biden is wonderful. Nancy Pelosi says he should be on Mount Rushmore, and he's accomplished more than any president ever did in his term. And you did wonder how many people were buying it. It's clear to me they weren't, based on, as you said, all the red arrows going in the other direction and the effect of the economy. And it does not help when people in the media are telling you, no, you are wrong. You think that inflation is high,
such a huge
but
part
look
of
at
it.
these indicators. And great, they can make the case, and I get it. I've been told myself, the economy is great. Look at your 401k. Well, there are a lot of people here who, out there who don't have the same financial situation or 401ks, or they're invested in these various funds, and they're just trying to go day to day. They go shopping for food, and they see the price of groceries. And then the administration will say, but we've lowered all these things. Inflation is down. This is the other big argument. They've done so much. Look at how great the economy is now, which to me, I think this is just me thinking about this. It's like if your kid spills red punch on a white carpet and then they clean it up and look, the stain's almost gone. Look at that. Okay, which is great. But you know what? I'm not going to forget that you caused the stain in the first place. And I don't know. I could be crazy, but that's the way I think about it.
I would extend that metaphor and say that Biden's the one who bought the white carpet, which was a bad idea in the first place, right?
Yeah,
like
that's doubly
they
bad.
Caused they caused the problem situation, which is the 2 or 3 trillion more they threw in with the Green New Deal's disguised Inflation Reduction Act, and the second American Rescue Plan, like the second big COVID bundle, right? So they created the conditions. Did not recognize that they created the conditions, even though some lefty economists were like, I don't know how this is going to go.
Right.
And then when the inflation goes up, they're like, don't worry, we're going to get the inflation down.
Transitory.
The rate comes down. the
Right.
prices don't come down the same amount,
Right.
and then people are still ticked about it. Let me play a clip for you. This is, to be fair to these folks, this is CBS News, 4 a.m. So
Yeah. Okay.
everybody's a little punchy at this point. But this
Sure.
is Margaret Brennan,
Oh.
who is, you'll know from the CBS hosted vice presidential debate, and from her, we've mentioned on the show, her incorrect fact checking of J.D. Vance in an interview with him. She's pretty lefty. So here's what she has to say about this phenomenon, about caring about prices.
Any country I have ever covered anywhere in the world, people vote on the 3 feet in front of them and the kitchen table they sit down at every day. And the economic issues are just so fundamental, and the experience of that. And, you know, Nora, you said earlier, maybe we overfocused on grocery prices. I think, you know, Donald Trump campaigns saying he's going to lower the price of bacon. The president of the United States has nothing to do with the price of bacon.
Or eggs, for that matter.
Or eggs, or any of it. But it's
or
promising.
gas.
I get you're uncomfortable, even though the head of the Federal Reserve and those guys, you don't quite know what they do back in Washington, but they're making your house more expensive because they're hiking up more, you know. You don't get that. You don't get the national number where Joe Biden is telling you, look, inflation is moderating and coming down, but you understand your grocery cart or your gas tank. And that personal experience just seems to be what at least people are using to justify their vote for Donald Trump when they're citing the economy.
Okay, there's so much here.
All sorts of things.
There's so much here. She's trying to empathize. That's what she's doing.
I would say the first few seconds, I'm like, ooh, okay,
Yeah.
yes.
This is why it cracks me up, because she's trying to get there. I'm like, Margaret, you're almost there, right? And she says, yeah, okay, people do vote on their daily life. And then there's the condescension about, I get that you people don't get the Fed.
Yeah, that's right.
And then she uses the word justify your vote for Trump, not allowing for the idea that, you know, that would be a rational way to vote. Also, if you bring down, let's just do the simplest argument against her argument that they have nothing to do with it. If you bring down the price of energy by allowing American energy production to be robust, you bring down the prices of everything.
Yes.
Now, on the other hand, the tariff stuff could bring prices up.
Right, we don't
if you use
know
those
how-
as more than a negotiating tool, which
That's
we
right.
shall see. But I
Plenty
felt like
of
that
time
had
for
a
that.
lot in it. And one of the reasons that people who do these panels, and I just watch panel after panel after panel, and look, I'm on those panels, but often I'm the person on the panel who's like, guys, let me tell you about why this happens, right? I'm questioning their priors. There's so many of these panels that uniformly, no one on that panel is worried about buying groceries.
No.
This doesn't occur to them.
Yeah.
Joe Scarborough was talking about how much butter costs.
Yeah.
And he's like, a friend told me butter costs $3. And then Mika goes, actually, it's more like 5 to 7.
Yeah.
I think she said 7, but she's in
Yeah.
New York, so that's, you know,
Right.
it's not that much.
She's
here.
getting it from Balducci's.
that too. And like,
It's the French butter.
there are people who are very acquainted with those prices, and Joe and Mika are not them.
Right. It's like this can go all the way back to JFK, President Kennedy.
Yeah.
Not RFK. Although they're, you know, probably in the same situation. But JFK would ask his advisor, Kenny O'Donnell, about, you know, he said, oh, that's a really nice watch you have. How much was the watch? And he'll tell him how much the watch cost, like whatever, $1,000. It was probably a lot of money.
Right.
Even back then. It was
Right.
a fancy watch. And Kennedy asked O'Donnell, is that expensive? Like, he doesn't know. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, they just have no.
They don't
'cause
understand.
whatever they want, they can get.
Yes.
So I mean, you're right. It's
It
the
makes
same
it hard
thing.
to analyze normal people.
And they're
Yes.
trying to.
As I joke, I keep my career mediocre and have a lot of children so that I can have the, you know, normie rites of passage buying groceries.
No, that's right. That's right. I mean, you know, look, a friend of mine tells me that he and his wife don't cook for their kids, so it's just like takeout every day.
Wow.
And even if they want to do healthy, great. But that kind of adds up, and all of a sudden you lose again any connection to what everyone. So they scoff at the idea that eggs are up by X amount.
Right.
It doesn't really matter to them.
By the way, just as a note, Sean Trendy is watching the data, and Republicans are winning the popular vote by 5.3% right now. He says that'll come down, although some of the GOP strength with minorities will blunt the shift to blue.
Yeah.
But the GOP is getting the same vote inefficiency issues the Democrats had in the 2000s and 10s, which by which he means that some of these gains will be in blue states.
Yeah.
And sometimes
California-
house districts that are not competitive.
Right.
But I say all to the good that folks are cross-pollinating in this way because now
Right.
you have to talk to minority voters, and that is good for both parties to be talking to them.
But and of course, for the left, they're flummoxed by this because they're still trying to understand why black people are racist against, sexist against women, and Hispanics are
Well,
racist against blacks.
Yes.
Because
That's it.
we'll
Yeah.
get to that in a second.
That's the double whammy.
Yeah. But
Let me offer my thought on why this is a pretty large rebuke to the
yeah, I
left.
was going to say. So, what's your take on?
I think, and of course, because I don't write fast enough, I think someone at The Atlantic beat me to this take. They thought this was going to be the post-Dobbs election,
Yeah.
and in fact, it was the second post-COVID election. You and I thought, oh no, is Virginia all that happens post-COVID?
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
whole backlash we get.
You and I talk about it, and our friends like John Podhoretz at Commentary talk about the reckoning.
Yes.
And we thought it was 2022.
And I held out hope after 2022 passed and was like, well, I guess people aren't mad about that. I'm really mad about that. I don't want to overread it. But I held out hope that this would, at some point, there would be a reckoning
Yeah.
about, let me just use the term, all the craziness that these people threw at us from 2020 to now. And it turns out, instead of being a post-Dobbs backlash, this looked like a post-crazy COVID backlash. And by that I mean this lecturing, hectoring, self-righteous crowd.
Yeah.
That during 2020, and the media led them, but Democratic politicians,
All over it.
national and local,
Right.
were the carriers of this message and the people with the police power to shut
Yeah.
you down
And
if you
teachers'
disagreed
unions.
with them. The teachers unions that shut schools, these social media companies that censored people in concert with a lefty government, the Faucis of the world, right?
Yeah.
These condescending jerks who told you, no, we're going to do all this crazy stuff, and all this crazy stuff is normal. Stopping school for 18 months is good and normal.
Yeah.
Shut your mouths. Censoring people is good and normal. Shut your mouths. Not allowing any dissent on trans issues or gender issues in schools is good and normal. Shut your mouth. On race issues, you're racist. Shut your mouth. On sexism, you're sexist. Shut your mouth.
Right.
Right? This is,
Yeah.
and then they tell you that this is normal life. And then they tell you that inflation is normal life.
Right.
And they tell you that your life is great. Shut your mouth.
Right.
And then, after all of this, and after people have seen a bunch of things that come from that crowd that aren't true, quote unquote, that were conspiracy theories, later become true,
Yeah.
they don't trust those people anymore. And maybe they don't tell those people they're voting the other way. But when the time came, even in super wine mom Loudoun County, many of those people were like, nah, I don't like y'all. I don't like
Right.
this. I'm not enjoying this.
You and I, we would have this fear that people just have short-term memory.
Yeah. Or
They
that it
don't
was-
want to remember it. It's
Or that
so
it was
horrible.
so traumatic
Yeah,
that they just
that's
like,
right. It's so horrible.
let's move on.
Yeah, or they were men in black with the flashlight thing, and all of a
Yes.
sudden it's gone. But then, as you mentioned, in places like Virginia, counties, Virginia came close. Obviously, it still went for Kamala Harris, and Hung Cao lost, which was a shame. But as you said, even in Northern Virginia, not counting Arlington County, which I believe voted 78% for Kamala Harris.
Hey, you got to have some true believers out
that
there.
is hardcore where we are right here. But other places, New Jersey, which
Yes.
lost by
Is New
about
Jersey a swing
5
state?
point. Yeah.
New era.
By comparison, so Trump lost New Jersey in 2020 by 16 points, I think, and he came within 4 points of winning the state. So relatively speaking, that was a huge shift. He flipped something like 5 counties, including in North Jersey. So places where I assumed like Essex County, which would go Kamala Harris's way. No.
Well, and I would argue that bolstering my theory is the fact that despite outmigration from blue areas to red areas, which I worried about before the election as something that might just redden red states and that would then lose a bunch of support in blue states.
Right.
I think that in blue areas, you saw more policing of your viewpoints. You saw more craziness.
Yeah.
You saw more wanton use of power against you during the 2020 to 2022 era to shut down your schools, to shut down your businesses, to tell you couldn't go to church, all those things. And if you're a right-leaning person or even just a normal person in those precincts, you're probably annoyed by that. And you might even be more annoyed because they were meaner to you.
Right. Because it became more concentrated. So all these people who didn't like what was happening in their communities, neighborhoods, counties, or the state, they fled. They all went down to Florida. If you look at the numbers for Florida, I mean, it went huge for Trump, right? And the people who are left behind, even they have a limit to how far progressive they want to go in the experiment. Case in point, California.
Oh, yeah, let's point that out.
Yeah, huge.
The proposition that Kamala Harris refused to take a position on, even though it would have been an easy win to just say, like, I'm for punishing shoplifters more because it's a bad situation. This proposition would allow more criminal punishment for shoplifters and I think some drug charges. And it is winning all California counties, and it has 70% support in California.
Yeah, that was Prop 36, where beforehand it was okay to steal as long as it's under $950 of merchandise.
This is another example of the crazy,
That's
right?
crazy.
That people were subjected to is open drug markets.
Yeah.
The idea that criminals should not be
That's
locked
right.
out, that we should let them out immediately. Gascon,
Possessing heroin is not a crime.
Gascon, is that his name?
George Gascon.
One of the most famous liberal.
I say it in the
DAs.
Beauty and the Beast style.
Beautiful. One of the most famous lefty DAs in this mold. He lost his job in California.
Yeah.
I'm going to play a little bit
Amazing.
of this clip from Morning Joe, and it's not the one that people are going to expect because Joe's going to be right about this one.
Okay. Every now and then, the broken clock.
But I'm going to point out something about it after I play his argument.
The Washington Post, Matt Bai, writes in part, I do think the prosecutions fed a narrative of Trump as a victim. I also think Democrats dug themselves into a hole on cultural issues and identity politics. Trump's vicious transgender ad in the closing weeks, she's for they, them, he's for you, was probably the most effective of the cycle. I think that probably landed with a lot of traditionally Democratic voters who feel like the party is consumed with the cultural issues, while the economic issues don't really change.
First of all, I think that ad was like more lighthearted than vicious, which
I
is one of
wouldn't call it vicious.
That's one of the reasons it worked.
I would call it matter of fact.
I think people needed a reason to feel good and hopeful about voting for her. And absent that, a lot of frustrated voters apparently decided to go with the guy who wants to burn it all down.
Let's dig a little deeper, because you have that stacked on top of what happened on college campuses this fall, stacked on top of what's been happening on college campuses over the past 4 or 5 years. I have said this on the air, and every time I've said it, people said, oh, you're just saying that because you're a white conservative. No, I'm just saying it because every Democrat that we have ever sat down with dinner with over the past 5 years who have kids that go to colleges say their kids are afraid to speak in class because they'll be canceled. Let me say that again. And they're all Democrats. Everybody that we've had dinner with, if they have a kid in college, you can go, how are the Red Sox going? Yeah, fine, yeah. Sitting there eating. Beautiful day today, wasn't it? Yeah. You know, my daughter at University of Virginia, she's afraid to raise her hand in class because if she says something that's politically incorrect, she will immediately be canceled. She'll be shunned from class. She'll be destroyed in social media by noon. So they just sit in class quiet. Now, if any of you, which camera? Give me a camera to look at. Boom! Oh, look at that one. If any of you out there say, oh, that's just like a conservative, white, Southern guy, da-da-da, that's what you're losing. That's what you're losing. Because that's what I heard. And I didn't hear it from Republicans. I didn't hear it from Trumpers. I heard it from Democrats over the past 3 or 4 years. Their kids were afraid to talk in class and say something unpopular because they would be canceled. And it's an epidemic. Willie will tell you it happens in New York City schools. It happens in colleges. And all of this adds up to people going, come on, this is crazy. And Mike, it's having an impact from, again, the trans ad to, the athletics. And by the way, as we've said on the show 1,000 times, Democrats should be smarter on the women's athletics thing. 85% of Americans oppose men transitioning after puberty and competing against women. And I'm not just saying this the day after the election. I've been saying this for years. This is not a hard call. You can show compassion and you can show grace. And as the Republican governor of Utah said, let's figure out a way to do this. But one way we don't do this is by allowing men who transition after puberty competing against young girls who have been working their entire lives to be as good as they can be, and then they get destroyed in the pool, on the track, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow.
He makes 2 points.
Yeah.
One, all the policing of speech is bothering normal people.
Mm-hmm.
Even the people who sit at Joe and Mika's table are bothered by it. So that means regular people are definitely bothered.
Well, I was going to say on that note really quickly, you know how people will say, oh, well, that's just anecdotal. I get the impression that Joe and Mika have a lot of Democrats over for dinner a lot.
Yes.
And so, I mean, those dinner parties must be amazing. The wine must be incredible and the food. So it's not like once or twice a year. You know they're having a lot of these dinner parties.
2, he makes the point about trans people, biological men, men competing in women's sports. This is an 85% issue in the United States of America. Who was it that said, find an 80-20 issue and stand beside it? Is that a Gingrich quote?
Probably.
It's not hard to be on the right side of this issue.
Right.
Here's the point I want to make. It took this shellacking for an MSNBC panel to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't have dudes crush women in women's sports because that's an 85-15 issue. And everyone else on that panel is silent.
Yeah, because they're still not sure.
They're still not there.
No, because they left their common sense back in the early aughts. And so they
Like,
think, I
wouldn't
don't
you
know,
be
man versus
wouldn't you be like,
girl.
damn?
I don't know. In the locker room changing. I think it's okay. You
So
know?
normal people,
Yeah.
like they lecture us and they say, this trans issue is hateful. It's awful. The way you talk about it is awful. The way you have concerns about it is awful. This ad working means you're all awful. No, it means that you're on the wrong side of an 80-20 issue.
Yeah.
And that people have real concerns about it, and you have punished them for having real concerns about it. And this is the spanking that you require to even open your eyes a little bit to that.
So I would say there's 2 other thoughts to this. One is the other side of the argument would argue it's not just that he's a white man from the South. Remember, he was congressman from Florida, Republican congressman from Florida. But in addition to that, he's old. And all young people feel much differently, and it would be 80-20 the other way around, Mary Catherine.
That's actually not true with young people, because as we discussed in the exit polls, 18 to 29 was much closer.
Well, you wait, we're working on it. For example, you think about like the number of people who are actually identify as non-binary or transgender.
Right.
And early on, just a few years ago, it's a very small number.
Right.
But they're seeing progress in the number of young people who are now identifying it, 300, 400%, which is still small. So they see it as this is working, and we need to apply even more pressure to get people to think the way we think. And so that number could legitimately grow, and then it's a real problem. The other thing is,
well, they won't even allow the discussion, or in the past haven't. We've gotten better about this. Won't allow the discussion about the idea that some is gender dysphoria genuinely and some is social contagion. They didn't want to have that conversation, which is something that parents should be allowed to talk about.
Right. And you were just talking about how, the numbers of young people who don't actually agree with what's happening. But as Joe Scarborough points out, they're too afraid to say this in school. And so the campuses have the run of they can run the show, right? It also revealed how much power this lobby has over the left. Yeah. To force them to
into the wrong side of an 80-20 issue.
Yes, and be like, I guess I shouldn't say anything.
Yeah. But anyway, I thought that was revealing that they still can't just say like, oh, that's a It's a good point, Joe. And Mike Barnicle, to his credit, was right about some of the postmortem ideas and saying that some of these issues were behind them. But all these things add up into like, those people seem, to borrow a phrase from Tim Walz, weird.
Yeah.
Right? So let's, should we go through some of the postmortem? First of all, I'm going to play you Rick Wilson just because he's so devastatingly wrong and I want you to hear it. This is Rick Wilson of Lincoln Project fame and money talking the day before the election.
But listen, I have a couple of things to think about for tomorrow, everybody. Number one, Trump's going to lose. He's going to lose badly. He's going to be wrecked. I don't know what the Electoral College count's going to be at the end of this, but it's going to get loud and it's going to get hard for him.
Okay, so just put a pin in that since he's the expert.
I'm really taking a victory lap on this episode.
He is such a mean dude on Twitter that I felt like
mean.
That
he's
was
very mean.
Warranted. Let me play you MSNBC again. This is Joy Reid talking about the quality of the Harris campaign.
And I think it's important to say that, anyone who has experienced or been in the United States for any period of time and experienced this country's history and knows it cannot have believed that it would be easy to elect a woman president, let alone a woman of color. Let's just be clear. And nothing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now. I mean, this really was an historic, flawlessly run campaign. Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. She came out and endorsed. She had every prominent celebrity voice. She had the Taylor Swift, the Swifties. She had the Beehive. Like, you could not have run a better campaign in that short period of time. And I think that's still true.
She says twice that the campaign was flawless. I love Queen Latifah. I think she's one of the most likable celebrities there is. But they are stuck in Obama land. Yeah. Right. This is like Queen Latifah endorsed her. What is the problem?
Right. I was on that's exactly right. I was on the fence. I didn't know if I should vote for it. And then Queen Latifah endorsed her. So I decided to.
Also, the idea that this is a flawless campaign.
That, by the way,
is insanity.
That would be a great book for somebody to write, like for Regnery or whoever, on the right. Who has like a lot of followers or whatever, and the title of the book would be A Flawless Campaign. Just be completely sarcastic about it.
I like it.
But man, people would read that.
Rachel Maddow said, Americans just voted to end our multiracial pluralistic democracy. I offer as a counterpoint that, in fact, what happened is Republicans put together the most multiracial coalition they've ever had.
It's a real problem for them.
To win this election decisively.
Yeah.
In many places.
And Rachel Maddow also said that she encourages, all their friends and supporters not to leave society per se, but to engage your Trumpy friends in order to
this idea. Okay,
persuade. Yes, go ahead, Mary.
No.
And to persuade them because. And my only thought was, I don't know, maybe a good idea might be after a shellacking like this to listen.
So. Yes, this was her idea. If you've cut off your relatives and friends for being Trumpy, as people like Rachel Maddow have endorsed you doing, first of all, that's bad for your mental health. You shouldn't do that. If you do that, you have been subsumed by politics, whether you're Trumpy or liberal or conservative or liberal or whatever it is, and you shouldn't do that. The idea that to fix that problem, you should go back to the person you've abandoned, not make amends, but insinuate yourself into their lives and their book clubs for the purpose of, wait for it, lecturing them again about how terrible they are so that they will then eventually be convinced to come to your side. Get out of here with this BS. Yeah. I would wager that it will not work, Rachel. It will not work. I do like the idea of engaging.
Yeah.
But this is transactional nonsense.
We can have a nice civil conversation, a discussion with people who, don't agree with us on a lot of things or they vote differently than us or whatever. That's great. But if you have the already ulterior motive in your mind, it is like certain relative in-laws, I might mention, who, when you get in a conversation, they're just waiting for you to stop talking so they can talk and tell you there's. I'd like to know, they're just actually looking at your mouth. And is the mouth stopped? Good. Now let me get to this thing.
I always equate this form of politics.
I'm going to get in trouble for saying that. Sorry.
I equate this form of politics to a street preacher I tell college students this, don't go into a discussion with a friend with the goal of converting them. That's not how ministry works. If you want to do the, if you extend the metaphor, ministry is being in people's lives and having real conversations with them and not yelling at them on a street corner about how, they're too into fornication. We got a lot of that at the University of Georgia. There was always a street preacher in the middle of campus just yelling at folks. It's a fun time though, because at UGA, people know a lot about the Bible because they were raised with the Bible. And so they'll stand there and argue with the street preacher with actual scripture. It's good times.
Wow.
Yeah. University of Georgia. Anyway, do you want to know how unifying the Trump rightward shift was in Michigan?
Oh, yeah.
This is how unifying the Trump ticket was in Michigan, for instance. Orthodox Jewish precincts in Michigan swung 20% towards Trump. Arab Bangladeshi precincts in Michigan swung 70% toward Trump. So, seems like he's doing the work that y'all aren't able to do.
Again, there's going to be plenty of time to break this all down in the next administration and all the various challenges. But one of those things, you want to talk about the pressures on, he's got to bring an end to the Middle East, crisis. Is that's the expectation from both sides.
Yes.
But, and this is an entirely separate conversation, but there are different, they both want Trump, but their expectations of how he wants to bring it to an end are very different.
Well, an aide said yesterday on this point that they want it to end quickly with decisive victory for Israel. Yeah. So that's a thing that the left won't talk about. This is the thing that annoys me. It's like if we're going to talk about war, let's talk about winning the wars, because that is the quickest path to more peace, particularly in this conflict. But I think Netanyahu's probably done him a lot of favors by sort of giving Biden the bird, doing what he needs to do.
Yeah.
And so it will be much closer to settled when Trump takes office.
Oh, by the time Trump takes office, I mean, this is the thing. We're in this truly genuine lame duck moment now for with Joe Biden. I would be the person I would be most scared to be right now would be like Ayatollah Khamenei in Iran, because now they know Trump's coming into office. It's clear that they were hoping that it was going to be a Harris administration. They have all the people who are sympathetic to them, like Ariana Tabatabai and Robert Malley and whoever else. Right now, they're going to be gone.
Going to look different now.
Going to look different, and now Joe Biden doesn't really care about, because the election's over. Their big thing was, can you hold off on attacking Iran until after the election? Well, guess what? The election's over. It was decisive, and I'd be worried.
Let me play you one more meltdown. This is Jimmy Kimmel on Late Night TV.
Man.
He's a comedian. Okay.
What a great show. Is this an entertainment show?
It's a comedy show, yes.
Huh.
Let's be honest, it was a terrible night last night. It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare, for our climate, for science, for journalism, for justice, for free speech. It was a terrible night for poor people, for the middle class, for seniors who rely on Social Security, for our allies in Ukraine, for NATO, for the truth and democracy and decency. And it was a terrible night for everyone who voted against him. And guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
Oh, look, I feel bad for people who are this upset, and I think they overestimate how upset they should be. And I think they overestimate how upset they should be, partly because of people like Kimmel pushing a lot of this stuff. But I would add this to the weirdness pile. We've spent 4 years and more, if you're on a college campus, or if we're on a college campus before that, because this is where this comes from, where the left's emo is imposed upon the rest of us, and we are ordered to be as emo as them.
Right.
Or else we're not good enough people. And people are tired of being this emo all the time.
All the time.
They use it as a weapon.
That monologue I thought was equal parts delusional and obnoxious, and it's like, again, just beat me over the head with this and you still don't get it. The big thing that's happening right now is, what are the lessons learned? If you're a Democrat, if you're somebody who supported Harris, Walz's campaign, and it's a resounding defeat, right? I mean, it's not even, you can't even make the electoral college argument right now because he's leading in the popular vote.
Which is good for the country, by the way.
Yeah. It's not close. You're not going to say that it's Russia or whatever. It's decisive. What are the lessons learned? And the lessons, I think that their takeaways so far from what I've seen from a lot of these people in important positions is that all these voters are just, dumb. Or disinformation worked.
That's one of the arguments,
It's a
too. That was on
huge
The
one.
View yesterday where
Yeah,
they were like,
yeah,
if we could just regulate social media, these people would agree with us.
They would know that the economy is great.
By the way, one of the reasons you guys missed this, as always, is that The View is yet another panel with no one on it who believes anything different.
No.
I understand that one of their panelists worked in the Trump administration for 4 years, but now
No
agrees
names,
with
Mary
the rest
Catherine?
of them.
No names.
Everyone, Alyssa Farrah Griffin. But now she agrees with all of them.
Yeah.
So then you don't get a preview of this kind of thing.
No.
And you assume that there must be some nefarious thing going on.
Right.
And so you have trouble explaining it. Let me, again, I understand that people have concerns about Trump, some of them grave. I do too. I have concerns about
Same.
his understanding on the limits of power and the people who will surround him and what that looks like. I think those things are real. I just think that the exaggeration of some of them can get people into a really unhealthy state. On the upside, as I was saying, decisive win. Either way it went, I was hoping for a decisive win so that it would be good for the country in that way. And here's Harris just conceding the race like a normal person yesterday.
Right.
Let's play her. And I thought it was like pretty decent little speech.
People who are watching, it is okay to feel sad and disappointed. But please know it's going to be okay. On the campaign, I would often say, when we fight, we win. But here's the thing. Sometimes the fight takes a while. That doesn't mean we won't win. That doesn't mean we won't win. The important thing is don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop trying to make the world a better place. You have power. You have power. And don't you ever listen when anyone tells you something is impossible because it has never been done before.
I would say in terms of clarity, it's one of her better speeches. It's like, I'm not left with, what did she mean by this? Or she's flip-flopping. No, it's pretty clear what she's trying to say.
I think her speech moment, she's pretty decent.
Yeah, I mean, she's
by the way,
obviously
there was a viral clip of
rambling.
There was a viral clip of a squirrel running across the stage right before she came out, and everybody was like, "For Peanut." That was the pet squirrel severely executed by the local government in New York City. Look, appreciated. As usual, I'm not blown away by her oratory, but this is the way we do things. She says we live to fight another day, and I hope those followers listen to her.
I had this horrible fear that it was going to be like at the end of Harry Potter, where they think he's dead and he comes to life again, and then the war, and then it continues on the battle. It's like, and it comes right out of Hagrid's arms. No, instead, I was happy to hear that she is going to support a peaceful transition. Yes, there was a bit obvious dig about January 6th when she talks about that they're not going to.
Fair.
Yeah, okay.
Fair dig.
I mean, it was something. But again, peaceful transition, that's good. I have no idea what that conversation was like between her and Donald Trump. I do hope that Trump goes to the White House to meet with Joe Biden and have a nice civil conversation. And that
we have some reporting on the plans for that and what's happened behind the scenes. This is Phil Wegman, less than 24 hours after the polls closed. He's at Real Clear Politics. And just 1 week after condemning him as a petty tyrant, the vice president congratulated the president-elect. According to a readout of the call provided by the Harris campaign, she urged him to be a president for all Americans. Trump heaped generous praise on an opponent he had condemned previously as a Marxist. According to his campaign, he acknowledged her strength, professionalism, and tenacity. If the press releases are to be believed, a feeling of detente broke out over the phone, said Trump spokesman Steve Chung. Is it Chung? Both leaders agreed on the importance of unifying the country. But it's not all nicey nice behind the scenes, is it, Vic?
No. Of course not. So, I mean, on two levels. One, of course, I still
Sorry, one
please.
click. President Biden also placed a call to the Trump campaign after expressing a commitment to ensuring a smooth transition of power and emphasizing the importance of working to bring the country together. He invited the former president to meet with him at the White House. They last spoke after an assassin tried and failed to kill Trump this summer. Yeah, that happened.
Yeah.
And
at least once.
You might put that on the weirdness pile.
Yeah.
Where people were like, maybe not with that. I'm not blaming the whole left for that, but come on, it's a weird thing. Happened twice. And they have not met in person since their Atlanta debate set into motion Biden's forced retirement. Okay. Sorry.
Right. I know. I do hope that he meets. And the other thing is, I hope Trump gives a great inauguration day speech, inaugural address. And I hope he doesn't. I hope he's gracious in victory, so that he doesn't just dump on Biden and Kamala and whatever other president is on stage in their presence, like they're right there. Can you at least come on now? So I don't know, but I have no idea what he's going to do. It is interesting that he's going to be running with the mindset of, well, this is it for me, and after 4 years I'm done, so I can do whatever I want. There's a lot of talk about whether or not that he should they could exchange pardons. That Trump, that Biden would pardon Trump.
I actually like this idea.
And then Trump could pardon Hunter.
Bipartisanship at its best.
Yeah, that would be something. It would heads would explode, of course. So I mean, I don't know. We'll see. But of course, the blame game has already begun within the walls of the White House and the Executive Office building. Between the Biden and Harris teams, as you know.
Yeah.
At the end of, I was saying, at the end of the 2000 election, which was very contentious, and Clinton and Gore met in the Oval Office, Gore was angry at Clinton. They were angry at each other. So, all their energy was focused on George W. Bush, but behind the scenes, as you were saying, they did not.
Well, and there's a lot of anger behind the scenes now.
Yeah,
the Harris campaign is like, y'all messed this up. David Plouffe, who was an Obama guy who came over to help the Harris folks in their Sprint campaign, has deleted his Twitter account because he said something rather normal after the election, which was like, we dug out of a very deep hole, but not quite far enough. Thanks for leaving it on the field to all of his, here's the thing. You kind of have to say that, but now he's getting so much blowback from that, I assume.
From the left.
That he's deleted his account. I'll give you a quote from a reporter from Biden World. There is no singular reason why we lost, but a big reason is because the Obama advisors publicly encouraged Democratic infighting to push Joe Biden out, didn't even want Kamala Harris as the nominee, and then signed up as the saviors of the campaign, only to run outdated Obama-era playbooks for a candidate that wasn't Obama. Ooh.
Wow.
You know what? Obama did pass on Biden in 2016 and discourage him from running, remember?
Yes, of course.
And then picked Hillary as his predecessor. And then, yes, did have a part in this whole operation that picked Kamala Harris, who had been dubbed the new Obama.
Mm-hmm.
Which
He's like the puppet master.
Did not have the chops to be.
Yeah.
And then his people ran this campaign. So I think he does have some responsibility here.
Yeah. Biden has legitimate gripes, as we know.
But, he should have not run, so...
I know. As Barack Obama had told him before, you don't have to do it, Joe, right? He also said never underestimate Joe's ability to F things up. So here we are.
Do you think he would have won in 2016?
A Biden over Trump? I think that he would have had a good chance of... He didn't have the kind of baggage. We didn't know all the Hunter Biden stuff yet, or maybe a lot of it had not fully developed. And the only one of the reasons was he didn't want to go up against Hillary. That would have been a terrible primary for him.
Right.
And he's talked about it. You don't want to go. Those guys they play rough. And the other thing is, of course, Beau Biden had just died. So that was one of the reasons.
So it's interesting to me that they're kind of putting that on the Obama, because I sort of believed the idea that he didn't do it because his son died and he was in a tough place.
Yes.
But maybe he really did want to do it.
Oh.
And he would have been a better Biden, better version of himself.
Yeah, better version of himself.
And he, we must say, would have had quite a bit of sympathy because his son had just passed away. Would the timing on that have been after or before Trump had gotten in the race? Would Trump have gotten in the race at all?
Yeah.
I got to look up these things before I talk about them, guys.
It's very interesting. And there was, the unnamed Biden official in Politico who said that this is clearly Joe Biden's fault, right? And so...
Actually, it would have been around the same time because he was Yeah, he was considering getting in the race summer and fall of 2015.
That's right.
Trump got in June of 2015.
Yeah, that's right.
So.
To go against Hillary.
Yes.
So I mean, and again, and she had been anointed. So here we are. But those are just, I mean, some of the problems and some of the finger pointing. Simone Sanders also said she was very upfront by saying that Joe Biden did not get stabbed in the back; he was stabbed in the front, and that they wouldn't even let him campaign in Scranton, so they only have themselves to blame. I mean, honestly, had Joe Biden stayed in the race, it would have been worse, I think.
Oh, yeah. But that whole team got themselves in a pickle, as I like to say, and they couldn't get out of it because once I looked back at some of the reporting on Dean Phillips, we talked about Dean Phillips back then. He was the one Democrat, a Minnesota House member, who decided to self-fund his primary challenge against Biden. And he was saying, this guy is too old, and I'm saying the things that people won't tell you who are behind the scenes seeing it. Yeah. And they were all like, shut up, Dean. Go back to your corner. And if you read those stories, you're like, ooh, Dean was really on to something there, guys. And the Democratic Party had the same powers it did in October of 2023 when Dean started talking about this. I'm on a first-name basis. Dean Phillips started talking about this, as they did later, except what they would have done is in October 2023, they could have had a primary of some kind. That would have been healthy.
That's right. That's right. I have a quick question for you. I know we're running short on time here. What to make now of Ann Selzer, who was off by 9 points about Trump's numbers in Iowa, because everybody got so excited about it because they thought it was only down. It was like 47-44 right before the election. And then, of course, he wins like 56%.
I mean, I think I'm sort of a chill person about these kind of things. Like, I think if you come up with a weird result, you publish the weird result.
Yeah.
I would ask, like, why isn't anyone else getting a plus 17 Trump and putting it out there, right? If we're going to do weird results, you should do weird results both ways.
And the problem that we had said, it turns out to be true. There's just no way anymore in 2024 and moving forward through conventional polling as it's done to talk to all these people who clearly in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, who voted for Trump. Right. They're not answering. So they're playing guessing game. What about, I got another one for you. Yeah. Alan Lichtman. The keys.
Oh, yeah, the keys, not so much. Nate Silver wins that battle between Alan Lichtman and the model battle.
Right.
And I appreciate it. I think Nate Silver is a guy who listens to critiques, who understands that he's not in the same bubble that all these other people are in, it appears. As I joked all election season, I was like, I love based Nate Silver. That's my favorite version of Nate Silver. 2 points I want to add. It looks like Republicans will not prevail in Nevada in the Senate race.
Oh, I was just about to say, I thought Sam Brown was going to.
I don't think so, but it's still up in the air. Or Wisconsin, it looks like Humpty, who I love with the mustache, will not prevail there. So there was some ticket splitting because people are nervous about Trump, so they vote for the other person.
Mike Rogers, too, in Michigan.
Mike Rogers in Michigan. Pennsylvania's still being counted, and I really hope Dave McCormick prevails. He ran a great campaign. He's a great guy.
Fox has already called it for Dave McCormick, but we will see what everyone else does.
He's got a nice little cushion still.
Yeah, I think the big thing was him switching from David to Dave. That's
and one last
who doesn't
point.
Like a Dave?
One last point I want to make about people not going Democrat. I think that this candidate, she didn't make the case. They didn't have a situation where I'm not going to say they didn't let her make the case because she was clearly happy with this strategy they were running. She didn't make the case. A lot of Democrats even were like, nah, that's not working for me. I don't believe it. As I've said before, he had the plausibility test when he was president. And for a lot of people, he didn't pass it. But for a lot of people, he did.
Yeah.
And she didn't pass that test in the end. So that's one thing. Two, Democrats, I don't think, because they let the excesses of Trump convince them that their own crazy was fine. They're like, we're not crazy. This guy's obviously the crazy person. We're not the crazy people. They told a bunch of Latino voters, minority voters, men voters, religious voters, that they were not welcome with them.
That's right.
I want to note real quick among Hispanic voters.
Yeah.
There's a note about their religious observation.
Yes.
Catholic Hispanic, Trump plus 7. Protestant Hispanic, Trump plus 30. Christians combined, Trump plus 17. No religion, Harris plus 46. Plus 46.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you've sent a message that religious people are not going to be comfortable in your tent.
No.
And then men,
their beliefs are not.
Men, like, are you surprised that men who feel like they are men don't feel comfortable with y'all? I know they tried the last-ditch efforts, but they've heard toxic masculinity from your leadership and that they're the problem with the country for years. They didn't miss it. So you got to work on earning them.
I was just saying this morning to Kate about the whole white male problem that the Democrats now have. And Van Jones pointed it out, much to his credit, before the election, that if you keep telling these people you're not wanted or you're the problem, well, it's not a small minority.
Yep.
The white male. But in a lot of people's minds, they are.
One last thing.
Yeah, please.
Just to be problematic, because you're Asian.
Yes.
A 47% Asian district in New York last night, Harris 51, Trump 46, or not last night, but in the election, 19-point swing in a largely Asian American district. So just like there's all these data points that suggest folks are not buying what the left was selling.
Right.
So
I would say two quick things. One, I said it before, if it turns out it was going to be a decisive election, which it was more than I imagined it was going to be, then it's very obvious. It was going to be very obvious because all the indicators, if you take out all the chatter on the media, that Trump was going to win this, because based on just all the indicators, it's just going in his directions. That's the first thing. Then the second thing, I would say the first indicator I thought something is wrong on Election Day was Dixville Notch, Mary Catherine.
that early indicator.
There six voters, and it was split 3-3. The last time it was 5 voters, and it was 5-0 Biden. And as somebody joked on Twitter, it's probably one family, and they're all pissed off at each other now. Okay?
I love it.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Really quick self-correction on the last episode. We were talking about the SNL skit with Tim Kaine.
Yes.
Like, who is Tim Kaine? And they were joking around that, that one of the names they threw out was Tim Scott. And I said Tim Scott, senator from Florida.
Oh, how dare.
As listener Barton Swaim reminded me. That would be Rick Scott. Sorry.
Okay. I have, or Tim Scott from South Carolina. That's who.
Yes. I mean, I was. I thought
I
was thinking Rick Scott in Florida.
There was one point I was going to make, and then I totally lost it
because
my brain doesn't work. Hold on. Oh, I have one correction, which is we did play the viral clip of Jake Tapper and John King finding 0 counties that she improved in. They later found 58 counties of the 4,600 in this country.
Well, that's a lot.
Yeah.
58, not relative to 4,600.
So I just wanted to point that out.
Good.
Later, they found those counties. And there may be more when you look at the final count, because California needs 17 weeks to count its vote. So
can I make one personal observation?
Good job, guys.
Can I make one personal observation about you?
Yes.
You're like the only person I know, and we've been doing this show for a long time, who will say, oh, wait a minute, I lost my train of thought. Let me think about it, and then remember what you're going to say. According to studies, more people who, the more you try to think about it, the more it escapes. But
sometimes that happens.
Something about that brain of yours.
I have learned that my brain is like a workbench, that if you turn your back, everything floats off of the workbench, and then you just have to find it in the air and grab it. So that's what I'm doing every day here, folks.
Fascinating. This is absolutely fascinating. It's, you know what?
Where's that damn tape measure? There it is.
This is what happens if you take all the caffeine pills. Okay, that wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Victorino Mattis.
I am at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. You can follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on YouTube or Instagram. Don't let the emo take you over, whichever side you're on, okay? Thanks for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast.